All right, sorry, it took me a minute to figure out how to turn the music off, but finally got it. Thank you everyone for joining us. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about this Hold Harmless and how it works and how it's going to impact your funding and just everything related to this. And so we're happy that hopefully this tool is able to be useful for y'all. And we're excited to answer your questions about it and kind of run through some examples. My name is Josh Haney. I'm joined by Catherine Knepp, and we're going to kind of walk you through this tool that we've been able to put together. But first, I wanted to give a quick update on sort of implementation elements of this that we've gotten from TEA. They've sort of clarified some things. You guys may have seen this, the sort of expanded Q&A document that they put out. This slide just shows sort of the broad overview of how this Hold Harmless is going to work. Again, for the spring semester, everything's tied to your on-campus participation rate for the sixth 6 weeks. If you exceed the target that TEA has set for you, and your ADA is below the Hold Harmless amount, you'll be eligible and you'll benefit from the Hold Harmless. There's a Comp Ed Hold Harmless that essentially looks at the 1920 versus 2021 school year. And then for districts that didn't get an attestation in for the third 6 weeks, TEA has given you another bite at the apple there. You have to meet a higher threshold on your sixth 6-week on-campus attendance participation rate. But our tool kind of helps you determine if you're going to meet that threshold as well. So the couple updates that oh yeah, okay, so that kind of highlights what I just went over. The updates that that we've heard from TEA again, and this was published in their Q&A document, is the spring semester, all those 6 weeks, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, that will be treated as a set, right? So you're either all in on the spring, or you don't get any Hold Harmless benefit there. So that's an important update we want y'all to be aware of. And then also there's these questions around how TEA is going to calculate your sixth 6-week on-campus participation rate. And so there at the bottom of the slide is sort of borrowing language from TEA, their Q&A. And so it's, the number of days, the number of students marked as being instructed on campus for at least 1/3 of the days taught during the sixth 6 weeks. So that's a mouthful, but if the student is attending on campus or marked present on campus for at least 1/3 of that last 6-week period, they can count towards the numerator in this equation. And then the bottom, as TEA describes it, the denominator here is the total number of eligible students attending during the sixth 6 weeks. One question we had to the agency is, what about a scenario in which you have a student who during the sixth 6 weeks attends, let's say, 6 days total. The other days they move, or for whatever reason, they don't attend school. They attend 6 days during that last 6-week period, and they are all on campus, right? They show up for 6 days during that period. How is that student considered in this calculation? Because it would seem, we may argue that that student should count towards your on-campus participation rate. Every day that they were eligible, every day that they attended, they showed up on campus. TEA in the response to us indicated that no, that student would not count towards the numerator in this equation. They would count towards the denominator though. So that student that is attending on campus 100% of the time, even though they don't exceed that 1/3 threshold, they would not help you meet your on-campus participation rate. So I know that's probably not going to be a large number of students, but I just wanted to let y'all make sure y'all were aware of that sort of the answer TEA has passed along to us with regards to that specific scenario. So with that, I think we will, oh, let's see. Oh yeah, and this is just kind of me. This is just outlining that point about the students with the low levels of attendance days. So yeah, that is an issue. You know, that's how TEA is explaining that to us right now. So let's see.
Barbara Flores says she wants the example scenario again.
Yeah. So the scenario is a student over that last 6-week period, right? So let's say it's 30 days. Let's say they attend school 6 days out of that period, and they're just absent all the other days. All of those 6 days, however, let's say in the scenario, are on campus. They show up physically to your campus to attend school for 6 days. TEA's response to us is no, that student will not help you meet your on-campus participation rate because it didn't, back on the earlier slide, I said, TEA said it had to, they have to attend on campus for at least a third of the days during that 6-week period, right? So if the student is only on campus for 6 days in this scenario, they would not meet that 1/3 threshold. And so they would not count in the numerator of that ratio, and they wouldn't help you meet your target. They would, however, count in the denominator of that ratio. And so they count against you essentially. And so that's the information we've gotten from TEA on that so far. All right, before we launch into examples, I think Gianna asked if the numerator include eligible and ineligible. My understanding is when they did it based on the, when they calculated the target based on the fall snapshot, that was eligible students. That's, if I recall, that's what they say in the FAQ. While Catherine is doing the examples here in a minute, I'll go double check that, but that's my recollection of how they describe it in the Q&A. Yeah, so another question is if the student withdraws, is that what you're referring to? That could be one possible cause of low attendance. The other could just be they just don't attend school. Yeah, I don't know. They don't have to, I guess, for this scenario to hurt you, they don't have to necessarily formally withdraw. But yeah, that's essentially the scenario I'm talking about.
Yes, and Deanna, for the 6 weeks, the student, the denominator is including just your, those are all the eligible, and then the numerator are the students that are eligible to count towards your on campus because they've attended a third of the days.
Right. I think, yeah, the FSP eligibility. And I think the reason I brought up the fall methodology is because I think they're going to mirror that with the 6 weeks. That's why I'm sorry, I didn't finish that thought. Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you. So yes, I believe in the FAQ, they describe FSP eligible counting for that ratio when they set the target. So the assumption would be, and that's something that, yes, we should, we'll take back to TEA and try and get a definitive answer for you, but that would be the assumption that they're gonna mirror that same methodology with the 6 week calculation. Okay, what else we got before we move on? Will the target numerator for all students be the same? I'm not sure I'm interpreting that. It's so the target is for a district. A student doesn't get a target, right? So of all your students, right, the target is X% has to attend on campus. And so, they have to meet the on campus, they have to attend at least a third of the days on campus. And so that the target is not for an individual student. I hope that answers that question.
Margie Grimes maybe has a question of some sort.
Let's see. Oh,
should we go through some examples and then you can
yeah, let's do that. Let's see. We got one question from George.
And before ESSER adjustments for ADA and funding.
When comparing current year versus last. should I be looking at last fiscal year's summary of financial reports before ESSER adjustment for ADA income? I guess, George, is the comparison you're trying to do for the comp ed hold harmless? Because the comp ed, of course, looks at 1920 versus 2021, but the ADA, the other hold harmless, is just looks at your attendance for the 6 weeks versus TEA's target. So with the broader hold harmless, there's no multi-year comparison, but for the comp ed hold harmless, it's the comp ed numbers are not impacted by the ESSER adjustment, right? The ESSER adjustment was just on your total ADA. It just brought down your total ADA. So the comp ed numbers for 1920 are going to be tied to your fall snapshot that you submitted in fall of 19. And then the comp ed number, and that will compare against the numbers you submitted in fall of 20, your fall snapshot in 2020. So you're going to take fall 19 versus fall 20. Okay, I think, yeah, let's move on to some examples, and then we can circle back to some of these questions as they come in.
That's right.
So I'm going to stop sharing. Catherine, are you ready to start driving? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start sharing. We had 4 districts email me your hold harmless calculators. If for some reason, I'm going to say out loud which district I'm going to. If you're on the line and you regret that decision, you have to be pretty quick on the trigger and tell me that you're not interested in sharing your info, although all of this is public data anyway. So
and everyone's confused by this, so don't be embarrassed. It's okay. No. We're all learning.
And also it would be really helpful is if you're willing to oh, we can't unmute them, can we?
I think I can, yeah, if, well, who are we calling up first, Catherine?
Well, I would like to start with Amanda from Texarkana if she's on the line.
Okay. And Amanda, if you don't mind, we'd like to bring you up as a panelist so that way we can quickly answer some questions.
We're gonna pretend like we're call and response here.
Yeah. Amanda, I don't think Amanda from Texarkana
is that's on. Okay.
Amanda from Texarkana, if you are on.
Or anybody from Texarkana for that
matter. Identify. Oh, there we go. Anita's there.
Okay. Yep. All right, Anita.
Give me a second, Anita. Let me get too many things open here.
Well, so one thing while we're upgrading Anita to panelist here, we just to give you if you are attending this webinar and you've not had a chance to really mess around with the calculator, it should be on your screen. Anita's nice example. The first thing you'll want to check when you do this is you've got to enter your county district number here in cell H8. And right there, you'll notice that you have to put in the dash, just like you would on Omer's template. I've seen districts that have had some challenges with that, so that's a reminder. The other thing that should clue you in is right here, you've got this really nice Texarkana here. If you don't work in Texarkana, it won't say Texarkana, it should say your district, which is a cool feature, and there'll be an error message that says check your county district number if you've not entered it properly. So they've done that correctly. Now, Anita, you'll go ahead and unmute yourself, or maybe Josh, if you'll unmute her.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so Anita, it looks like you offered instruction to all students in the third 6 weeks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. And you had your superintendent sign and submit the attestation statement already?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Okay. So then tell me about your on-campus attendance participation. Is this 87? Is this an estimated number, or have you guys had great attendance all year?
It has been great attendance all year. It has climbed. I wouldn't say all year, but I would say very solidly it has climbed in the last in the last couple of 6 weeks. So I know the last number I saw was 84. 87 does not surprise me. So
okay. Well, good. And we can even play around with that number as we work on this example. So that's good. So whoever prepared this, whether it was Anita or Amanda at Texarkana,
Don't ask me a question I don't know the answer.
Oh, I'm not going to ask you a lot of detailed questions. I won't put you on the hot seat. But I'm enjoying this interaction. So, because we don't get to see you guys in person, so we maximize this as much as we can. So here it looks like in this data entry, they've had some fluctuation a little bit. You can see some of their numbers fluctuate throughout the course of the year, but they've been pretty steady throughout the year. And then they see that there's probably going to be a little bit of a drop off. It seems natural for the 6
weeks.
And then here they've entered in the number of students in each of the census block groups. So let's see what happens with these questions. So you'll see that the cells highlighted in green have been impacted by the hold harmless. So if we switch back and forth, we'll see that this first 6 weeks, the 6,392 ADA, that was kind of maybe lower than they were hoping. And we'll see that this hold harmless adjusted that. And because they complied, yes, and had a high participation rate in the 6 weeks, it looks like their average is going to be that hold harmless number. And then
I guess just to clarify real quick, so the average of those first 2 6 weeks is below their hold harmless number, right? So they're going to be averaging, somewhere in the 6,394 range or whatever. That's going to be lower than their hold harmless of 6,500, whatever that was. So that hold harmless,
correct,
giving them a boost for the first 2 6 weeks. And then go ahead with the third.
Yeah, the third 6 weeks, right here, you'll see that also is below, right? Because we're doing this in the 3 batches. We've got the first 2 6 weeks together, and we've got the third 6 weeks all by itself. And then we have the second semester. So that 6,500 number seems to be their target. So if you're not sure where we got the hold harmless numbers, there is a participation rate spreadsheet that this is the hold harmless figures, right? We're all familiar with this. And then also there's the fall themes on campus participation schedules. So this is the data that we used and filed into the calculator. So you wouldn't have to go looking for it. But if you wanted to check our math, you could go here and look for your district.
And those are on the, if you're on the TEA coronavirus website, on the attendance and enrollment, wherever that FAQ is, that's a link right in that same section.
Yes, so right here in this attendance and enrollment section are all of these things. So anyway, very good. We'll go back to our calculator. Okay, very good. So one other thing that you can do just when you're budgeting and looking at sort of the fluctuation is you can do like they did here and make sure that you get your hold harmless for all of 3 batches. But then you can go back and let's just say something really funky happens here and only like, I don't know, I'm just going to put in a crazy number, 50% of the students show up for some reason, who knows why, right? Then we'll see what happens to their second semester. See, as they are taken in a batch, that hold harmless is not applied to the second semester. So you can see the changes before and after. So feel free to play around with this as you go. Okay, so we can do another district now, unless Anita has some questions about.
I have a question. Can we talk about state comp ed and what that means to us as far as the 1920 to the 2021 and how we would look at that?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So we've got here, these are the comp ed numbers that you're reporting for this year, right, in your fall theme snapshot. And then down here below at the bottom, you can see what that would have produced for you given those numbers. And then we've also got the weighted comp ed count for last year. And then this right here is the higher of the funding that would produce from the higher of the 2. And your higher here is last year. So assuming that you'll be funded based upon last year's comp ed counts, this is what we estimate your comp ed allotment to be.
And that's a completely separate calculation within our summary of finance. It's just going to pick which one's higher, and our allotment for state comp ed will be based upon that funding rule for that.
Mm-hmm. And important to point out here that when you, the state funding formula for comp ed assumes a particular minimum tax rate. So if you're at the maximum compressed rate or higher, you're good. But just for anybody out there that maybe in a different scenario, that's what we're making that assumption on.
Okay.
And then just one thing, so Anita and others out there, you can check the math on this by taking your tier 1 through tier 5 comp ed counts, and tier 1 times 0.225 and so on and so forth. That's how you arrive at the weighted count. And so we took the numbers that I think, Catherine, if you highlight that cell F, whatever it is, the 2021 count, go down one.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. You can see the formula there, right? And that just pulls in the data that you entered in over in your data entry tab. So it gets so essentially a weighted average, a weighted count, and that's what the basis upon which TEA makes the comparison.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Yep.
All righty.
Okay, so next up is we've got Jaime from La Jolla. Jaime, speak now or forever hold your peace.
One second. All right, Anita, I'm sending you back to attendee. Let's see if I can find Jaime.
And the other three the other two that I may be pulling up is Gail from Kermit and Felipe from United. So if either one of you, Gail or Felipe, is camera shy, then let us know. But
I see a Jaime in the audience. I don't know if it's the Jaime. So Jaime, if you're out there,
raise your hand.
Oh, go for it. Okay, there he is. Okay, yep. Sorry, I was looking in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna bring
all good. Okay, sweet. So it should be up on the screen now. Have we upgraded Jaime? There he is.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So Catherine, why don't you walk us through what's going on in La Jolla?
Yeah, so with La Jolla, of course, first double check to make sure that the county district number has been entered properly, which it has. I just like the big bold print, looks nice. So let me just do the same call and response if Jaime's ready. Did you offer on-campus instruction to all your students in the third 6 weeks?
Yes.
All right, so that's why we've got that Y there. And then has your superintendent signed and submitted the attestation statement?
Yes.
Good, okay, so those are the first two qualifiers, right, to make sure that he is going to be eligible for the third 6 weeks. And then he is anticipating a little lower attendance participation in the 6 week period at 25%. So here's one of the features of this template, right? He's entered in all of the sub-pop counts for all of the different additional categories. I mean, was there a total ADA that you would like to put in these first few 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I skipped that 9. So
That's okay. You know what? If you don't mind, I'm just going to go see what happens, right? Let's just see what happens. Let's assume that you had a really low ADA for all 6 weeks, but it looks like you're eligible at least for the first semester. And depending, since you're in an area where the on-campus attendance participation rates were probably lower than other regions just because of how you guys were affected by the pandemic, let's see what happens. So here it looks like he has probably qualified for the hold harmless for all the 6 weeks based upon his answers in those four main questions at the top. So as a result, you can see that you've got this first average here is has been replaced, and then the third 6 weeks as well, and then the batch of the second semester as well. So then with the comp ed,
it looks like, Jaime, you entered in the same block group counts as 1920.
right.
okay.
So at a minimum, you will, but this is a good example though. This is a minimum of what you would receive because you're gonna get 1920 if this year's was lower, right? So If you have numbers from your PEEM snapshot that are higher, then the calculation will turn out to be bigger. But, you know, this is still worth using at this moment because, you know, that could be valid.
And so obviously, Jaime, the the hold harmless impact column there, column K, is not going to be very valid for you because you're not, the hold harmless isn't going to really bring you up 24,000. It's once you go back and enter in your total ADA, then you'll be able to really clearly see sort of a before hold harmless and then an after hold harmless. And so that,
in our case, my number is less at the
Yep.
at the total 88.
Yep.
The hold harmless will help me out. I just
right, yeah. So that gold column there, that's going to be what you're funded on. But I know sometimes we're getting questions from CFOs and superintendents are like, well, how much is the hold harmless really helping me?
Doing for us, yeah.
Yeah. And so if
These are
you're
88.
trying to answer that question, you'd want to fill it out a little bit more completely. But yeah.
Well, and then one thing to point out here in Jaime's example is that we didn't spend as much time on with Anita's is you'll notice here that the average for his, for this homebound count, right, is 4.165, where his actual values here for the homebound were higher than the harmless numbers. So this is part of the reason why we included all of the sub-top counts here is this is gonna this hold harmless, well, that's great. I'm making the probably pretty safe assumption that you did not get to 24,000 total ADA this year, but as a consequence of accepting this hold harmless, which, you know, is relatively small if you're really truly down both in enrollment and attendance, is you will see a fluctuation between what you've reported and what you will be funded on.
Yeah. So same with what else is that? Mainstream looks like it's going to go down. Career and tech is going to go down. I'm a little
contain, yeah.
I'm wondering about well, I think the self-contained,
double check your numbers to see,
probably a data thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Jaime, do you have any questions for us?
Thank you. No, I'm good. I'll go back and check those numbers.
Okay.
It's all good. Okay, very good. Let's do, is Felipe from United on the call? Oh, good, he's here.
All right, give me a second.
Y'all are letting me geek out in my my former teacher days. It's definitely scratching an itch.
I'm not very well versed in moving people around on here, so give me 1 second.
Now we feel all the teachers' pain.
So who is next, Catherine?
Felipe Jimenez.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm butchering people's names.
All right.
There he is. Felipe, feel free to unmute yourself. So here we see United ISD up here at the top. We've got the county district number in appropriately. So Felipe, it looks like you guys offered on-campus instruction during the third 6 weeks.
Yes, that's correct.
Good, and you have signed and submitted your attestation statement?
Yes.
Very good, and so, wow, you've got a really healthy on-campus attendance participation.
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, I thought you wanted a count. So that should actually be
what percent would you estimate?
7%. I mean, I figure as long as we're over the 5.4, right?
Is that, if that's your target? Okay, let's just for fun, let's put in 6. You said 5.4 is your target?
Yeah, that's what it says, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I checked the TA
let's see.
numbers, and that's what it was.
All right. So
it was 5.4, I think.
We can look you up and just double check.
While Catherine's doing that, I'm going to take a pass through some of these questions. Let's see. What do we do if our district runs as 9-week periods? So you have to report attendance on a 6-week basis. That's what you get funded on. your 9 weeks is sort of districts can have a grading period of 9 weeks, but that does not impact the funding. You report attendance. The TEA calculates your funding based on 6-week attendance periods. And so your PEAM staff should be able to help you get 6-week attendance reports.
In fact, if I can, I may just be able to find a example of the reports that you guys pull.
Another question is, we should submit updated comp ed numbers in January. Does this hold harmless consider this higher number? That's a good question.
That is
We
a
don't
good
know yet.
question. Write that one down. I like that one.
I would assume, but TEA
but
always
we're
finds a way to
happy.
surprise us. And so, Luis, I will ask that of TEA and try and get y'all an answer.
So this is an example of one of the summer submission forms that you guys turn in, right? And you can see that there are various 6 weeks counts. So check with your PEAM staff. This is an example from a district from last summer. So you should have something similar to that. This is for special ed. And you'll also have one that looks like this, but it'll be much more complicated this year because you'll have probably subsets of subsets because of the remote instruction pieces, but the formatting looks similar.
Next question was, what is the best way to estimate the funding that could be lost if the spring semester hold harmless requirements are not met? So George, I think, I think you're in Austin. And so what you'll need to do is, if you're using our calculator.
Well, Felipe's a good example of this.
What was that?
Felipe's could be a good example of this.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, okay, Felipe's filled out his form here and he's got little different counts for each 6 weeks. So if you don't meet the 4th, 5th, and 6th in this particular example, right? We'll X this out here in a second, but let's see what this gives us as a result in terms of target levels. So for the first 12 weeks, we had somewhere in the 39.6 range, right? Oh, look, so he's been upgraded on the first 12 weeks. And then on the third 6 weeks, he's 39.5. Let's see where he fares this time. Yep, he's upgraded this time. And then he made the assumption, it appears, that the second semester he's going to trend similarly low. And so that's where the hold harmless has been applied with that. So you can see, you can run a template, right? We don't provide the funding necessarily, but you can just literally plug this into Omar's template. The order may be different. You may not just be able to copy paste, but you should be able to do one template with these numbers and one template with these numbers. And then that will show you the impact of the two differences. You can just subtract the two from each other.
Just to circle back, so the best way to estimate the funding that could be lost if your spring semester conditions are not met is just back on your data entry tab. Just put that number. Right, put a number that's lower than your spring semester target there. So you can say 0, and then it's going to bring in all your actual data from the data entry tab.
So let's just pretend, just for the sake of example, I'm just going to copy these and paste these over here in Felipe's example. And remember, we've kept this artificially at 0. And you can see the impact there of not meeting the third 6 weeks because we just copy pasted over the lower number, and you can see
not meeting your spring semester target. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so then, George, you can just do sort of a before and after comparison there.
Felipe, did you have any questions or what ifs that you would like us to entertain?
So why did it bring over the lesser ADAs? And
I just did this as an example, but you'll probably want to go back in and change these values to whatever you're reporting.
Uh-huh.
Like the fourth 6 weeks, Europeans probably already has that, because we're probably in the fifth, right, 6 weeks currently.
Yeah.
So you can just use that, and then you might, just have some discussions in the office internally and see what your trend is for the 5th and 6 weeks, what you think will happen. Do we think everybody's just so happy to be back at campus that they're going to persist through the year, or are people going to start trailing off as summertime hits, as usual?
Again, to add to that, it brought over your actual, remember, this is your actual data, what your district records. That's what you put on the data entry tab. Because in this example, your on-campus participation rate that we have up there on row 11, Catherine put 0, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. I just did
Okay.
that as an example, but let's just say you're at 10.
Yeah, you scared me there for a bit. I was like,
Oh, no. Just here, if you put in 10, then you've met your,
if we wouldn't meet the 5.6% or whatever it is right now.
yes, that would be the impact, that we were just playing around with it just to see what would happen. But we're feeling good about your 10% participation rate.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Looks good.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
All right. Do we have one more or two more? No, we have one more. We have Gail Fuquay from Kermit.
All right, goodbye, Felipe and Gail. I don't know if she's on.
Well, it's okay. Maybe she'll see herself in the recording.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, just put in the chat. We'll select somebody from the chat if you drop it in.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of people ask for the calculator. Let me copy that link real quick. Here is the link for the calculator, everybody. Oh, there we go. I found it. Okay.
And the Weebly website, if you haven't seen that, our legislative tracker, right? Just as a real fun little thing, if you haven't seen this.
Oh yeah, take them to that.
Right, this is I'll take you to the home, right? This is where we keep a lot of our newest resources, is this MCA text 87.weebly.com. And this is a website we've stood up for the legislative session. And so on the news tab, we have a running list of some of the things you guys are familiar with in the newsletters. And then you'll see one of our little news stories down here is the announcement of the calculator, and there's a link in there in case you forget where it is or you don't save your calculator, or you want to see if we have an updated one. One thing we should mention, I like to see that everybody's still holding on, all of our participants here. Note that Region 13 has produced a new funding template. They have incorporated some features that check your hold harmless. Note that when you have to, it's kind of like the HB3 rollback tab where you have to put in a yes or a no under certain qualifications. It should be noted that Omar's template does not do the same type of automatic calculations that ours do. Our data already imputes the TEA fall participation rate data in it for you. So just note that there's a difference between how he uses things and how we have done things. Ours is a little, in our opinion, more accessible, but
they should, if you enter in the same data, I believe they yield the same results, but it's given the complication of this, it's there's way, it's easy to get mixed up on things. And so I would, it's good to check things from multiple different sources and from different angles. And so I would, definitely advise y'all to take a look at both of them. But we did note that that he did thankfully make that addition to his template. So now just have more tools to use.
You've got these questions here. So just be careful on how you're answering these. Certainly you could use our calculator in tandem with his and just sort of like put in what would produce, you know, the same results as ours if you're confident in that calculation. And then simply, you know, go back to the data entry tab and paste in your values if you just want to use, you know, specific ones, of course.
One question that we're getting about the remote attendance cap.
Yes.
Yes, and so yeah, and so it looks like she's good to go. I think she got the right answer. This is Diane. But for those of you who are worried about how the remote attendance cap interacts with this, a couple months back, I think, or about a month ago, I think we sent this out in a newsletter after we confirmed it with TEA. But essentially, TEA is going to they are going to cap the percent of remote ADA that gets counted for school funding purposes, and it's going to be capped at your aggregate 18-19 attendance rate.
Mhm.
So let's imagine a scenario where the remote attendance cap brings you down below the ADA hold harmless. TEA has confirmed to us, and I guess to Omar, according to this comment, that the hold harmless is your hold harmless. Even if the remote attendance cap brings you below the hold harmless, you will get the hold harmless for the 6-week periods you qualify for. And so
that doesn't override it. Yes.
Yes, yeah. The hold harmless it overrides any impact of the attendance cap, the remote attendance cap.
Yes,
So,
that's
yeah.
a good question. And here's that attendance and enrollment FAQ, just in case. And where all of this is posted is at the bottom. I think somebody raised their hand in the chat or something.
Okay, I see a question. One is, so we accept the hold harmless as a whole? Yes, and that's from Anita. It is, yes, it's either you get all of your student all of your student counts for that 6 weeks replaced, or none of them, right? So you can't, there's not a situation where you could just get total ADA replaced and then bilingual, but you keep your special ed counts because those are higher. It's not going to be that nuanced. You either get that whole column replaced for the 6 weeks, or you get none of them replaced. And the trigger looks just at total ADA.
Right.
Right.
So using this example from Texarkana again, they've got 0.622 homebound. This is part of the reason why we built this calculator, is to force the recognition that because their total ADA is being adjusted by the hold harmless, so is their homebound values as well for both 6 weeks, even though both of these 2 6 weeks had homebound numbers higher than what TEA is using. So you can't pick and choose.
Yeah. Another question is, how do we calculate the on-campus participation rate? And so again, we'll send out slides where we kind of walk through that, Norma, at the beginning, but it's a fraction, right? It's the numerator is the number of students that attended at least a third of the days on campus during the six week period, the six week period. And the bottom of that is your total eligible students who attended during that period, during the six week period. And so I don't know if your student information systems have caught up to this yet and have developed a report for y'all, but I would have your PEAMS folks take a good look at the guidance here in a TEA spreadsheet and maybe reach out to the service centers, and they can help sort of help you pull the exact data elements you would need to make that determination.
And I put on the screen one of the questions that I think is sort of a good starting question. If you're just starting to figure out kind of what this means, the attendance participation rate. Here's a good starting place because they do have an example of a calculation here. So for example, if a 10th grade student participates in an on-campus instruction for 12 days in the six-week period and another 17 days in asynchronous remote instruction, optional 1 day of required asynchronous remote instruction because the campus called a staff development day and has one absence, say they've counted up the days that they're present, the 12 divided by 30, because that was the full number of days if you add them all up, and then it's 40%, then this student qualifies as an on-campus instruction participant.
And that kind of leads in well to a question in the chat about, does a school district need to end remote instruction to qualify for the spring semester?
No.
Right, the answer is no. You just have to have an on-campus participation rate that exceeds TEA's target for your district. In our tool, if you punch in your CDN, it will help you determine what your target is. All right, we got some other questions. Let's see. Go over the average. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, Catherine, can you hop back to the calculator and let's look at the average, the sort of results on the hold harmless
Sure.
tab.
So we'll remind ourselves, this Texarkana was below 6,500 for the entire year, right? Just went up and down a little bit. Some of these counts were, higher than normal, some of them lower. Then they answered yes to both of the ones that apply directly to the third 6 weeks. And then they had 50% participation, which we'd have to look at the spreadsheet, but I think that's higher than the
I
participation.
think it's right there in J11.
Ah, there it is. Hey, thank you for reminding me that we included that. So, so target for spring semester hold harmless is 69.9. We just did this as a fun thing, but let's put in 80 for now, just to see what happens, right? Then we can see that all six weeks were replaced because she qualified for each of the 3 batches. So that led to an overall average of the values that TA has provided. And then without the hold harmless, right, if it was, if we just took all the data that she supplied here over these six weeks, this is what would happen in terms of a refined average here at the end. And then you subtract the 2, and the difference between this number 66,530 and this number 6,365.96 is 164.404. And this is just the ADA, right? Obviously, this is not funding yet.
Right.
This portion is funding, however, down here. We do have the funding portion here estimated for you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think that's, hopefully that's clear for y'all. Let's see. 4 6 weeks because you're at least 5%. Yeah, so how the migrant situation, that's another question. I'm making a list here. I'm not certain, and I don't think TEA addresses it in their FAQ about how the migrant, that generally if you have more than 5%, that's the best 4 6 week periods that get averaged together. I'm not sure how that is implemented with regards to the hold harmless. So that's a question I will follow up on.
Right. I would imagine that if all of your 6 week values are below the target, then I'm not sure that matters. Right. So if your best 4 6 weeks are even below the hold harmless, I'm not sure you have to have the answer to that question. But if you do have a collection of 4 6 week periods that together are higher, that's where that would be a concern.
Right. Yeah. And thinking back on the comp ed question, I think this is just going to be tied to what you submitted on the fall snapshot.
I would imagine that as well. Yeah,
I'm not sure if there's, and I'm not sure what updated numbers you guys would submit.
I think, in some ways you don't want them to be reevaluated because, you'll be funded on whatever you are always funded on. Okay, never mind.
Will the comp ed hold harmless calculate in the funding template, or is it computed separately? You can use this template here to calculate your comp ed funding. And again, it's just you get the best of your 1920 or your 2021 weighted count. So we've already pulled in your 1920 count.
Yes.
And so you just back on the data entry tab, you supply your 2021 count, and then you get the better of the two.
Yeah.
But I'll double check and see if TEA will allow any updates, I guess, to the comp ed data. And I'll make sure to email that out.
Yeah, you certainly don't want them updating the target. Oh, there is no target. It's just best of. That's right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Another question I saw was, do we have to get the hold harmless? Let's say they meet the eligibility, but their actual data they report is higher than the hold harmless, then no, TEA is not going to force you into the hold harmless.
Yeah, for the third
so
six, yeah.
If you're
But
like a growing district and you organically have actual ADA that you're recording that's higher than the hold harmless amount, you don't need the hold harmless. You're going to get funded based on your actual students for that 6 weeks, right? That 6 week.
or for that period of adjustment, yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so you're not going to you're not going to be forced into the hold harmless if your actual data is better. And actually, I have to hop off, and so I'm gonna leave y'all with Catherine.
And feel free to email us too as you find more questions. But I'll be here until about 3 o'clock to keep answering your questions. So continue to submit those if you have them. Otherwise, we will see you guys later. Not sure when our next TSPN webinar will be, but sometime here in the session would be my guess.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to send along our questions. It's great seeing on y'all. And yeah, I guess Catherine, you'll stick around for a little bit and work through some more examples. Okay. All right. Well, bye y'all. See you next time. And Catherine, real quick, I'm going to stay in the webinar so that way if I leave, it doesn't end it accidentally. So
yeah, that's cool.
I'll leave my computer running. Okay. All right. Bye y'all.
Okay. Okay. Someone asked, are the comp ed numbers already on the TEA reports? The last time I checked, I don't think that they have put those 2021 values up yet on the summary of finances. If you go click on the TEA analysis, it doesn't break it down for you just yet, but I can check real fast and see if they've updated that since the last time I looked. I just found that in my spreadsheet, she both. Oh, somebody already, okay, so yeah, you've already submitted those comp ed numbers in your fall PEAM snapshot, so you should have them, but whether or not TEA is reporting the 2021 comp ed values is another thing. Let's see. Campus details. Yeah, they have not yet updated their campus detailed report on the summary of finance. And it looks like your LPE and DP values still match, so. And then accessing and access to the recording of this webinar. I think we do our best to record these. We're still recording at this moment, so I think we're going to be successful this time around. We'll release it in a newsletter. Also, this is just a good reminder, if you or any of your staff are members of the Texas School Policy Network, you should be receiving newsletters all the time right now. Friday on mornings at 6 a.m. is when we release our typical weekly newsletter, although we're definitely updating you on a more regular basis since there's so much going on in the legislative session. If you are not receiving any of those emails, or you would like to include another person, then you're welcome to email us to let us know that they would like to be added. And Georgiana, it looks like you had a question. Or maybe she just hit the raise your hand button. Okay. Okay, I'm making a last call for any questions. And certainly if you want help interpreting the funding impact of this, once you run it through your template, feel free to let us know. Oh, here we go, I got another question. How are they averaging the last 3 years of dual non-left? Okay. So for the hold harmless purposes, they're not going to be averaging it. Oh, how did they come up with the number? I'm not entirely sure of their methodology of how they interpreted the hold harmless replacement for that. That's a good question. You can write that one down. You're correct in that they just started counting it. I'm not sure whether they took a portion of last year's data and just use that ratio. And in terms of your whole bilingual, that would be maybe the first place I'd look to see if it's some general ratio of what your previous bilingual counts were, but was the simplest way for us to derive a minimum number of days of on-campus attendance for individuals to count in the numerator for the campus. Oh, I see. Like what is your target, if you will, for your minimum days? So if we go back to that FAQ, right, it's talking about the attendance for that's a good idea to create a target. Let's see. Okay, so it's 1/3 of the days taught during the 6 weeks. So you would just take all of the students that are that could be possibly in your denominator, and then take 1/3 of that, and that would be your target, right? Let's see. Yeah, the dueling, if some of the sub prop counts may hurt you, but hopefully if you have a hold harmless apply to you, the total ADA makes up for the difference. But I can see where some of you are just barely getting the hold harmless, where it wouldn't necessarily make up the difference in the loss on the sub prop funding. So the students don't have a target, right? So you can have a mix of different students show up, but it just collectively it has to equal 30% of your denominator. Or whatever your attendance participation rate is. Okay, it's now 3 o'clock. So if you have any supplement questions or you'd like to give us a phone call, as always, just email us at tspn@moakcasey.com. Josh and I both check that on a regular basis to be able to answer your questions, return phone calls, that sort of thing. So anyway, hope you guys have a great afternoon, and we will continue to keep you updated throughout this crazy ride of a year. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you later.